Hey guys, I'm Shrek. Welcome to Shrek Airsoft. And in this episode, I'm going to take this hop-up chamber with this new barrel and this maple leaf bucking, and I'm going to install it into my Wolverine Airsoft Bolt-M HPA Sniper. Step one, we're going to take this maple leaf 60-degree bucking and we're going to install it onto our barrel. So I have my maple leaf 60-degree bucking, and it comes with this little ring right here, and I normally don't use that at all inside here because I'm afraid it's going to scratch up the inside of my chamber. But you can see you have the window on this barrel, and if you look down in this bucking, this is an auto butt bucking, so on the inside there's a little triangle on the very top. That triangle is oriented, so if you put this little button here up top and rotate it to my left, it'll be on top. So how we want to install this is we want to install this to the left of the barrel like this, and it just goes in. Just push it in like this, move it around, and if that little triangle is directly inside of that little window, you shouldn't be able to turn this. It's going to be very, very difficult to turn. And that is basically how you install the bucking onto your new barrel. Step two, we're going to install our barrel into our hop-up chamber. So this process is going to be a little involved, but we have our hop-up chamber here, and you'll notice there's two buttons here. Here's the arm here, and there's this little slot right here. This little button on top of your bucking actually slides into your hop-up chamber, and you should be able to see that little button. That way, this little triangle that's through this window is going to be directly on top of this arm. So when you adjust your arm, it pushes down on that little button, and it adds or reduces more hop-up onto your BB, depending on which way you turn a little hex nut inside of here. So we just need to take this, the barrel and the bucking, and we're just going to put it in, and it should, that button will line up in that window, and you just push it all the way in. It's going to be a little difficult, that's okay. Push it in until that button stops at the end of this slot. Our next step is to take this little black tube here. It's got a big diameter tube and a little diameter tube, and this slides onto the end of the barrel like this, and it slides inside your hop-up chamber, and it stops when it touches your bucking. Now there's three little holes here for some little hex screws that we have, and we have three little windows here on this little tube that surrounds your barrel. So we have the we have the upper hole and the two side holes. We have nothing on the back. So take this little piece here, and you want to orient it so that you have both of the holes that match this hole and this hole. Now there is no hole for this upper one, so you slide this in and try your best to make that match up. Now inside the package you have three little hex screws, and I'm not really sure what size this hex wrench is right here, but the two long bolts, the two long screws go on the sides, and this little one goes on the top. So let's go ahead and do that. We'll put this into the side, and it should slide right into that window, so I should be able to get it all the way down. And I did. The other side with the other long screw. Sorry about this. There we go. And that goes in the side all the way through that window that you saw on that tube, and we should be able to bury it in. That works, and if you feel, that actually locks that barrel in pretty good. So now we take this small one, and I'm going to put it in the top hole and just bury it all the way in and tighten it down. So that locks it in. Next, we're going to install the tensioner and we're gonna put this little set screw down. So this little part's a little persnickety. What we're gonna do is I'm gonna take the tensioner and I'm gonna put it here on the arm, and I'm gonna put on the spring, and then we're gonna load it into the hop-up chamber. I do not like the tensioner that comes with the Action Army hop-up. So I ordered the Omega tensioner from Maple Leaf. And all that is just this little part here. There's some little ridges on the outside, and it's kind of like half a tube. Well, if you look on your arm, about halfway up your arm, there's a little like dished out area with a couple of ridges on either side. Your tensioner fits right in there. And on the outside of your arm, there's a little hole that you put your spring into. Now, what I like to do is I just like to keep this arm level so that nothing falls out. And then we slowly turn our hop-up chamber until everything slides into place. And you can see it's in place and it presses down nicely. The next step is to install a little screw in here on the top. So this is the little nut I was telling you about. It's square and the hole is off center. So you have a long piece on the edge of the nut and you have this little skinny piece. This long piece right here fits on top of a ledge on top of this arm, and it just sets in like this. Take your finger and push down on it, and then on the inside here there's a little 2mm hex screw, and you just take your hex wrench, slide it in there and screw it down, and it will screw it down into place. So you turn this clockwise and it tightens the hop-up chamber. It actually lowers the arm onto the bucking to give you more hop. You turn it to the left like this, and it reduces the hop-up. So you don't want to loosen this up too much, because if you do, that spring will let loose and it'll throw that arm up, and it'll take your tensioner and it'll throw it who knows where. So our next step is to take our gun apart, and we're going to install this hop-up chamber into our barrel. Step 3, we're going to remove the barrel from our gun and remove the old hop-up chamber and old barrel. So to remove our stock, we're going to have to use a hex wrench, and to remove the barrel, we're going to need a small Phillips screwdriver. So there are 2 screws here and here on either side of the magazine. So remove the magazine if there's one in there, and take these 2 screws out. These screws hold the stock onto the upper receiver, and we want to remove this first. Then we can get at the little Phillips bolt that holds the barrel in place. Well, that one's in tight. All right, so the stock just pops off like this. And I don't want to take it too much out, because right here I have my adapter that fits onto my my tank. So I'm just going to pull it out enough where I can get at this little hex screw here. And if you're wondering what this tape is for, this barrel has a lot of play on the inside of the gun. So what I usually do is I tape it down so it'll keep the barrel centered. Otherwise, what happens is the barrel flops around and the center of the barrel goes off, so it causes my BBs to swerve. All right, so we can set this aside. And now we need to remove this little adapter here. On your old hop-up chamber, there's this little arm. We can go ahead and take that off. Once we remove the arm, we just take our finger and push the hop-up chamber and the old barrel out, and we can set our outer barrel aside. These are barrel spacers. There's 2 of them. One at the top and one at the bottom of the barrel. We are going to need those. So the first thing we have to do before we get started is we have to put our barrel plugs in. And the big one goes at the bottom, the little one goes at the top, and the purpose of these is it stabilizes them inside the inner barrel so that this barrel doesn't wiggle around whenever you make a shot. So now let's go ahead and look really closely at our Action Army hop-up chamber here. You'll see we have the arm here, and opposite the arm is a square with a little hole in the bottom of it and 2 screw holes. This top screw hole mates with this screw hole here. Now when you put this in, now I'm going to put this down here because I want these to fit really tight. So it's going to be a little difficult putting this in. So go ahead and insert your barrel. And when it hits those plugs, it's going to get a little difficult. That's okay, just keep pressing it in as best you can. Take this hole here and line it up with that hole. And how I'm going to do that is I have a little hex wrench here that I used before, and I'll be able to take it and just move it around, line it up as best I can, and then try to push it in the rest of the way. So right now my fingers are too short to push this hop-up chamber any further inside the outer barrel. So take your old barrel, slide it inside your outer barrel, and then you can use it to push your barrel in like so, and get these 2 holes to line up as best you can, because it'll make it easier here in just a second. And just slide it in, and that looks like that's about right. That went in a little too far. I told you, just a little more here, and that looks like that is about right. So the furthest hole is lined up here, and we have another hole here. Now we're going to take our magazine adapter and we're going to slide it back in, and if our holes are lined up correctly, this should slide in pretty easily. Now you don't want to Hercules this down, because this hop-up chamber here is made out of aluminum. These screws are made out of steel, and it's very, very easy to strip those threads. Next step is to take our outer barrel with our inner barrel and our hop-up chamber installed and screw it back into the upper receiver. Alright, so what I've done is I've screwed this down all the way, and we're going to do the same procedure we did before when we installed the bolt in. So you'll notice I screwed this in with the bolt pushed all the way forward. So we're going to bring it out forward and push it back in, and it does lock into place. So we know this is set up right. So now I want to take my little screw and I want to put it back in here at the top of the barrel. So I've got this screw in as tight as I want to put it. I don't want to strip it. But you'll notice my barrel has some movement here. And the big problem is when I make a shot, this barrel could move around. And what that does is it takes the top of the barrel and it moves to left and right. Because of the backspin on the BB, if the backspin of the BB is off to the edge here just a little bit, it's going to make it spin to the left. And I found with these rifles, if I turn this barrel all the way to the left, then that pretty much lines the barrel up. And then I'm just going to take a piece of duct tape and set it over the top like this. That will hold that barrel in, and it's not going to move nearly as much. So our next step is to take and put our upper receiver back into our stock. So here I have my hose for my airline here, and there's a little triangle, excuse me, it's a little rectangle that extends out from the trigger assembly. That needs to go on top. And then I'll slide this into place. Next, we want to put our screws back in. The long screw goes in the back, and the short screw goes in the front. And that is installed. So if you don't pull your bolt back, the nozzle gets in the way of the set screw, so you can't adjust your hop-up chamber. So you have to pull the bolt back. Once the bolt is back, take a 2mm hex wrench, and you'll see there's 2 holes in here. There's a big hole, and that big hole is where the BB feeds into your chamber to fire. Next to that is a small hole. And you take your hex wrench and you put it in a small hole, and as I said before, you can turn it clockwise and counterclockwise to adjust the hop-up. So I hope this video helped you out if you're looking to install an Action Army hop-up chamber. I really like it. I think they're great value, and they really make your shots really consistent. So I would really appreciate a like and a subscribe on this one. And cheers, guys. Have a good day.